Spain, Norway and Ireland have become the latest countries to officially recognize a Palestinian state. They join 143 other UN member nations to do so. The move has been welcomed in Gaza and the West Bank, but criticized by Israel.
The Norwegian, Spanish and Irish flags, unfurled and flying alongside that of South Africa, outside municipal buildings in the West Bank. It's a tribute to the three Western European nations that gave their official recognition to a Palestinian state. First came the formal announcement from Madrid.
At the meeting of the Council of Ministers that will be held today, the government of Spain will approve the official recognition of Palestine as a state.
Then, in Ireland's parliament, in front of the Palestinian ambassador, came the nod from Dublin.
We here in Ireland, we see you, we recognise you, we respect you, and today Ireland formally recognises the state of Palestine.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Outside, the Palestinian flag was raised beside that of Ukraine and the European Union. And shortly thereafter, the announcement came from Oslo too.
The government has decided that Norway will recognise the state of Palestine. Norway's recognition will come into force on May 28th.
It's a decision that has had repercussions across Europe and beyond. In Paris, an MP brandished the Palestinian flag in Parliament during questions to the Foreign Ministry. He was accused of provoking the Assembly and received a 15-day suspension. It's the highest penalty possible under the National Assembly's rules of procedure. There were similar scenes in Rome, as left-wing MPs waved the Palestinian flag during a speech by one of their colleagues. The news has been widely welcomed in Gaza.
We are happy with the nations that stood with us and recognised the state of Palestine. We hope that all nations will stand with us and put pressure on Israel to end the war.
Many in the West Bank concurred.
It's an excellent development. It gives us complete freedom, a recognised country, our own currency. It unites us so that we can escape the occupation.
The recognition brings hope to some Palestinians, but many obstacles still remain. Nonetheless, other European nations are expected to follow.
With us in the studio now is Martin Kobler, a retired German ambassador and former German representative with the Palestinian Authorities. He's now a member of Diplomats Without Borders. Mr. Kobler, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the show today. So these three European states recognizing Palestinian statehood, is that a symbolic move without much consequence, or could this really give new momentum to the push for peace in the Middle East?
No, I do think it's much more than a symbolic move only. Of course, there are no immediate practical consequences. The war will go on and it will not change the situation immediately. However, the fact that Norway, the father or mother of the Oslo process, recognizes now the statehood of Palestine is an important step. And don't forget, we shouldn't forget that 140 states in the United Nations, they recognized Palestine as a state. The permanent representative of Palestine is sitting in front of a nameplate state of Palestine in the UN. So it is important that also a few European states, Sweden and some East European states already did it. They recognized Palestine as a state, but I'm a little bit worried that it's not a joint European decision.
Exactly, because Germany, for example, is a lot more careful, saying that recognizing Palestinian statehood could actually stand in the way of peace. How do you feel about that?
Well, Germany is of the opinion that the two-state solution is the only way out of the war right now. And we have been saying this for the last 30 years. Now, the Oslo process was set up in '93, and everybody remembers the Rose Garden with Clinton and Arafat and Prime Minister Rabin being present. And it was supposed to be a 5 years transition period, and then there should be a final solution. However, as we all know, 30 years passed since 1994 and not so much happened. On the contrary, the situation got worse, the isolation grew. There is a Palestinian Authority which is corrupt. There is an Israeli government which is, gradually expanding the settlements in the occupied territories in Palestine, and these were not good developments. And now we have a new situation. That's why to get new dynamic into the, well, not peace process, in the political process, I don't dare to speak of a peace process right now, but into the political process and avoid the mistakes of Oslo. I think this is the game of the day.
What were the big mistakes of Oslo?
Well, the big mistake of Oslo was, I think, that the end status was not fixed. The end status after 5 years was subject to negotiations. Where are the borders of a state? What to do with the refugees? Where is the capital? How is the water distribution? All these questions were subject to negotiations until, well, the end of the transition process, and it never happened. So why not putting the pyramid just on top and determine the end status now? As the German government says, 2 states will be the solution for the security of Israel. And this is also emanating from the, what we call Staatsräson, from the, well, how to say, historic responsibility of Germany to provide security for Israel. But security for Israel is also the security for the Palestinians. There can be no security for Israel without ending the isolation of the Palestinians, without having a political process which is worth the name.
Yeah, I want to talk about the issue of security because Israel's foreign minister has accused Spain of, quote, being complicit in inciting genocide against Jews and war crimes by recognizing Palestinian statehood. What do you make of that rhetoric?
No, I think we have to look to the future now. It's very clear that both sides have rhetorics which are not conducive for bringing a political process ahead. So I never use the word genocide or apartheid or whatever. I think we should go back to look at to the legal status of everything, and not indulge in political propaganda here from all sides. Yeah. I think it's good if we go back to the international law. There are 2 levels. There is, of course, the right of self-defense for the Israelis after the brutal attack of Hamas, but there is also the principle of proportionality. So let's discuss about proportionality. The International Court the other day said stop the Rafah actions because it's not proportional under international law. So let's go back to legal systems and let's take emotions as much as it's possible out. I understand the fear and the anger of Israelis and also the pain of those who still have hostages in Gaza, imagine. But I also understand a close friend of mine, a Palestinian in Gaza, he lost 31 members of his family. There are in the meantime more than 35,000 dead and 80,000 injured in Gaza. Now, this is all something which I understand that you cannot demand, just strip strip yourself of emotions. But let's go to the legal system. The occupation of the West Bank, the isolation of the Gaza Strip, also individual responsibility of Hamas and Israeli leaders. I think the International Criminal Court decision, the International Criminal Court as such, is one of the biggest achievements we had in the outgoing last century, that individuals, independent of whether they are terrorists or whether they are heads of states like Mr. Putin or others here, that they are really accountable for what they are doing.
Let's pick some of the decisions that you pointed at there apart. The ICJ ordered the Israeli army halt all military activity in Rafah. Israel has pressed on, nonetheless, defying that order. Why does Israel think that they can get away with that? And can they?
Well, this you better ask Israelis here and not
but you
myself.
know the region quite well.
Well, I think I'm of the opinion that if we have an international court ruling and this court is an organ of the United Nations, everybody has to stick to what they say, and Israel should follow what they say. There are others now, genocide kind of proceedings now applied for by the South Africans. I think if we agree in the international field that we have international courts, that we accept their decisions, we also have to implement them. But it's, of course, I agree, a weakness of international law. If the court orders Putin, you have to withdraw from Ukraine, and he just doesn't do it, so what to do? Now, and it's the same with Israel. I don't like that representatives of these states, they do not follow the international order. The international order nowadays is in dissolution in a way. Nobody agrees on, well, legal norms anymore, so really. And I think there is a consequence beyond the ICJ and the consequence beyond the International Criminal Court, independent of Israel, that if states do not follow, it further erodes the international order, which is not good for the international system as a whole.
Yeah, there's so much more I want to talk to you about, but I think we're running out of time. I want to talk about your recent visit to Israel and the Palestinian territories. You know the region very well. What struck you most? What did people tell you? What surprised you maybe going back there?
Well, I've been following this conflict since, my youth, so to say, professional youth. I opened the German office in Jericho immediately after the Oslo Agreement in '94 and stayed there until '97 and have been following events ever since. So what struck me most was that Palestinians really, despite of the fact that I know there are opinion polls that they support Hamas, or many of them, a high percentage for Hamas, but they are committed to live in peace with Israel on the Palestinian side. But I'm convinced that it cannot be done under what the Americans call revitalized PA. There needs to be a game changer. There needs to be a time after Abu Mazen, after President Abbas, but also post-Netanyahu. Now, and here I see the problem, but this has to be decided by the Palestinians and Israelis themselves. We cannot do it from outside. The Palestinians themselves have to decide how their political structure will be, how Gaza and West Bank will relate to each other. The Israelis have to decide which government to vote for, who is ending isolation, engaging in a political process, not a peace process, a political process, avoiding the mistakes of Oslo.
So an argument for self-determination in the entire region. That was Martin Kobler. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
As we've just been discussing, Spain, Norway and Ireland joined some 140 other countries in officially recognizing Palestinian statehood. But what exactly does their recognition mean for the everyday lives of Palestinians? DW correspondent Rebecca Ritters reports from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank.
Here in Ramallah, the occupied West Bank's biggest city and the state of Palestine's de facto administrative capital, news of this latest recognition has been welcomed. In a gesture of appreciation, the municipality has raised the flags of Norway, Ireland and Spain. Mayor Issa Cassis tells me why their recognition is so meaningful.
It's a beautiful moment. It's a moment of hope. It really brought in our hearts hope for a better tomorrow, hope that the world is listening to us, hope that Palestine still has a chance.
Norway, Spain and Ireland joined some 140 UN countries that have already recognised the state of Palestine. The move is largely symbolic, but many say it has political meaning.
I always say that we want to live for Palestine. We don't want to die for Palestine. We live for earning our right for self-determination and for independence. We've been striving and fighting for 7 decades. And what is happening now is that hope is being revived.
The Palestinians we spoke to say that while it may not affect their day-to-day lives, they hope it will lead to yet more recognition.
The recognition of these 3 countries affects the whole world. It highlights our cause, that the land is ours, our rights, our reality, so they can stand with us, so we can overcome the brutal occupation.
The countries that have recognised Palestine are making the voice of young Palestinians reach everyone. Young Palestinians will have a voice in Europe.
We don't live in freedom. Spain and the other countries' recognition might make the occupation feel weaker. And countries that stand with it might come to our side and hopefully recognize us too.
Despite the signal of hope for Palestinians, many things stand in the way of a fully fledged Palestinian state. One major obstacle is the Jewish settlements, like that one you can see on the hill behind me. They're considered illegal under international law, but they're dotted all over the occupied West Bank, making a contiguous Palestinian state almost impossible. Another obstacle is the lack of a unified Palestinian leadership and the ongoing war in Gaza. Another major obstacle is a lack of political will from Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu condemned the move by the three countries, saying it was like handing out a reward for terrorism. He's long fought to keep the two-state solution off the negotiating table.
I think the biggest obstacle to peace is that Israel has gotten so used to being able to flout international law, do whatever it wants, get away with it, that people don't take seriously the need to think about what is a realistic outcome with the Palestinians. And therefore, if there is no such thinking, then people go along the lines of, well, maybe, we have to remove them permanently.
The leaders of Norway, Ireland and Spain say their decision was made to promote a peaceful solution. For Palestinians here, the move constitutes further recognition for their decades-long struggle for statehood.